They told me the one I loved most would die. It came true. The Spanish moss dripped from the live oaks, a ghostly curtain framing our 5th anniversary dinner at the old pink house. Clara squeezed my hand, her green eyes sparkling in the candlelight. 5 years, she breathed, feels like forever and no time at all. I smiled, running my thumb over her knuckles. Clara, with her artist soul and penchant for the whimsical, was everything I wasn't. I was Elias Thorne, architect, grounded in logic and blueprints. She was Clara, painter lost in color and feeling. We were an unlikely match, perfectly balanced. The arts festival buzzed with life, stalls overflowing with paintings, sculptures, and handcrafted jewelry. Clara, of course, was drawn in. I trailed behind, amused, until we came to a brightly colored caravan parked on the edge of the square. An old woman sat outside, a tapestry spread before her, glittering with crystals and tarot cards. Serafina. Come, come. Let Serafina see your future, she croaked, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. I scoffed inwardly. Fortune tellers. Snake oil. Clara, however, was captivated. Let's just see, she pleaded, her eyes wide with a childlike curiosity I couldn't resist. I rolled my eyes but relented. Serafina took Clara's hand, tracing the lines on her palm with a gnarled finger. Her eyes, milky and ancient, seemed to pierce through Clara. Then, the smile vanished from her face. A shadow hangs over you, child, she said, her voice dropping to a low, ominous whisper. A darkness, a great sorrow. Clara's smile faltered. What do you see? Serafina released her hand as if it burned her. She turned to me, her gaze unsettlingly intense. The one you love most, she rasped, will die within the year. The air thickened. A chill snaked down my spine despite the savannah heat. I opened my mouth to protest, call her out as a charlatan, but Clara gasped, pulling away from Serafina as if stung. Come on, Elias, she whispered, her voice trembling. Let's go. I paid Serafina a few dollars to get out of there, though I felt like I should have demanded my money back. We walked away, the words hanging in the air like a suffocating fog. Don't let it bother you, I said, forcing a lightness I didn't feel. It's nonsense, just a cheap trick. Clara didn't respond. Her face was pale, her eyes haunted. That night she had a nightmare. She thrashed in her sleep, muttering about shadows and darkness. I held her close, trying to soothe her, but the seed of fear had been planted. The first incident was minor. A chipped teacup, Clara's favorite, shattering on the kitchen floor. Then a near miss with a speeding car while she was crossing the street. She swore the driver had deliberately swerved toward her. I chalked it up to carelessness, but Clara was convinced it was something more. She started seeing things, fleeting shadows in the corner of her eye, hearing whispers when she was alone. Her art, usually vibrant and joyful, became dark and distorted. She painted twisted figures and stormy landscapes, images filled with dread. I tried to be rational, to reassure her that it was just stress, but her anxiety was infectious. I started sleeping less, checking the locks on the doors and windows obsessively. The prophecy, which I had initially dismissed, began to gnaw at me. I decided to investigate Serafina. I spent hours at the local library, digging through old newspapers and historical records. The librarian, a young woman with kind eyes, remembered Serafina and her caravan. She said the Romani people had been coming to Savannah for generations, always passing through, leaving whispers and rumors in their wake. Some people believed Serafina had the gift of second sight. Others called her a curse. I found accounts of past predictions, unsettling coincidences that had come to pass. A farmer who had lost his crops after Serafina warned of a blight. A merchant who had suffered a financial ruin after she foretold a market crash. It was all circumstantial, but it fueled my growing unease. One morning I found Clara's studio vandalized. Her paintings were slashed, her brushes broken. The word death was scrawled across the wall in blood-red paint. That was the breaking point. I called the police. Detective Harding, a weary man with a world-worn face, arrived to investigate. He took notes, dusted for fingerprints, and offered a grim smile. Could be a disgruntled artist, a jealous rival, he said, his voice flat. Savannah's got its share of eccentrics. I tried to explain about Serafina, about the prophecy, but he just gave me a skeptical look. Fortune tellers, Mr. Thorne? I deal in facts, not fairy tales. I knew I had to take matters into my own hands. I tracked Serafina's caravan to a remote campsite in the woods outside Savannah. The air was thick with the smell of wood smoke and herbs. I found Serafina sitting by a crackling fire, stirring a pot of something that smelled vaguely medicinal. I said, my voice shaking with anger and fear. What did you do to my wife? What did you say to her? Serafina looked up at me, her milky eyes unblinking. The threads are woven, child, she said, her voice a low drone. The tapestry is complete. You cannot change what is written. What is written? I demanded. Tell me, what am I supposed to do? She only smiled, a slow, unsettling curve of her lips. The raven flies where it must. The river flows to the sea. The one you love most, she paused, her eyes glinting in the firelight, will pay the price. I left the campsite more confused and terrified than ever. Clara's condition was deteriorating. She was constantly on edge, jumping at shadows, convinced that death was lurking around every corner. I couldn't leave her alone. Then came the mental breakdown. I found her in her studio, surrounded by her ruined paintings, sobbing uncontrollably. She was incoherent, ranting about demons and omens. I rushed her to the hospital. Dr. Elena Vance, a psychiatrist with a calm, reassuring demeanor, was assigned to Clara's case. She diagnosed her with severe anxiety and possible psychosis brought on by stress and trauma. She recommended medication and therapy. I stayed by Clara's side, watching her sleep, feeling helpless. I was losing her piece by piece. I started to think I was losing my mind too. One evening, while visiting Clara in the hospital, I saw him. A man lurking near her room, his face obscured by a baseball cap. He was watching her, his eyes narrowed. I recognized him, a delivery worker who had come to the house to drop off some packages a couple weeks prior. I confronted him. He denied everything, but I saw the flicker of something in his eyes, a cold, calculating malice. I was convinced he was there to hurt Clara. I alerted the hospital staff, but they dismissed my concerns. They said the man was probably just lost, but I knew better. I knew he was part of it, part of the darkness that was closing in on Clara. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the man's face, Serafina's words. I was convinced that something terrible was going to happen. I had to protect Clara, no matter the cost. I slipped out of my chair and walked down the hall. When I got to Clara's room, I saw a nurse administering medication. The nurse had her back to me. Then I noticed something wasn't right. The Roman 4 drip wasn't the correct color. It had been swapped out with something else, something dangerous. Without thinking, I lunged forward, knocking the nurse away from Clara's bed. The Roman 4 crashed to the floor, shattering into a million pieces. I grabbed Clara, pulling her out of bed, shouting for help. Chaos erupted. Nurses screamed. Doctors rushed in. The hospital's security swarmed the room. I was wrestled to the ground, accused of assaulting a nurse and endangering a patient. Detective Harding arrived, his face grim. "Elias," he said, his voice weary, "what the hell have you done?" I tried to explain about the man, about the Roman 4, about the prophecy, but no one would listen. They thought I was crazy. They thought I was the one who was endangering Clara. I was arrested and taken to the police station. Dr. Vance testified against me, saying that I was suffering from a delusional disorder, fueled by stress and grief. She said that I was a danger to myself and to Clara. While I was in custody, Clara seemingly made a miraculous recovery. The medication was working. She was calmer, more rational. She dismissed her earlier fears as a product of stress and exhaustion, lacking concrete evidence of criminal intent, and with Clara vouching for my sanity. I was released from custody, but the damage was done. My reputation was ruined. My career was in shambles, and Clara, she was different. She was grateful that I had saved her, but there was a distance in her eyes, a wariness. She didn't understand what I had done, what I had seen. She thought I had simply lost my mind. We decided to leave Savannah to start a new life somewhere else, to escape the shadow of the prophecy. We sold our house, packed our belongings, and drove away, leaving everything behind. We settled in a small town in the mountains of North Carolina. Clara started painting again, her art lighter, more hopeful. I found work as a freelance architect. We tried to rebuild our lives, to forget what had happened. One day, a few months later, we were driving home from a nearby art gallery. It was a beautiful, sunny afternoon. Clara was laughing, telling me about a conversation she had with one of the gallery owners. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. Then it happened. A deer darted out into the road. I slammed on the brakes, swerving to avoid it. The car skidded, veering toward a roadside embankment. I braced for impact. But at the last moment, Clara reached over and grabbed the steering wheel, yanking the car back onto the road. We narrowly avoided the embankment, but in doing so, she lost control. The car spun out, crashing into a tree. I blacked out. When I came to, I was lying on the ground, dazed and confused. Clara was slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious. I scrambled to her side, my heart pounding in my chest. She was alive, but she was badly injured. There was blood everywhere. I called 911, my voice shaking. The ambulance arrived quickly, and we were rushed to the nearest hospital. As I sat in the waiting room, waiting for news, I remembered Serafina's prophecy. The one you love most will die within the year. I had spent months trying to protect Clara, trying to prevent her death. But in the end, I was the one who was injured. As I sat there, waiting for news, my right leg started to hurt, then throb. It felt like it was on fire. When the doctor came out, he told me I had fractured my leg in 2 places and had to have surgery immediately. I realized that I may have misinterpreted the prophecy all along. Perhaps the one you love most wasn't meant to die literally, but metaphorically. Perhaps my actions to protect Clara had inadvertently destroyed a part of myself, my sanity, my former life. Clara survived, but the accident changed us both. She was physically scarred, and I was emotionally shattered. Our relationship was strained, fractured by the weight of what we had been through. As I lay in the hospital, recovering from my injuries, I couldn't help but wonder. Had I defied fate, or had I unknowingly fulfilled it in a twisted way? Had I saved Clara's life, or had I simply traded it for my own? I start thinking of the old neighbor, and if he was really tending to his garden and maybe he was giving information on our whereabouts. I thought back to how he always waved whenever we came home, and he would always be smiling. He knew.